true from a certain point of view.
All right. Hello there, and welcome to episode 19 of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. I'm Josh,
I'm Adam.
and we are so excited to be talking Star Wars this morning. And maybe it's not morning for you, but whenever you're listening to us, we're excited to be talking about it. And we're going to start with what we've been watching and playing in Star Wars this week. And Adam, do you want to let us know what's been going on for you?
Yeah, so I've been digging myself out of my book avalanche that descended upon me a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Finished Thrawn Alliances, which I enjoyed. I liked it a lot.
Mhm.
And that was going to be my canon catch up this week, but I just didn't have time to get that out. So canon catch up had to take a little break this week. And watched Clone Wars. And as far as Star Wars goes, I think that's about it. But yeah, books. So I did Thrawn Alliances, and I did. I'm working on Phasma a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I took a trip to Barnes and Noble last night, and didn't really buy anything. But in their toys section, and I've seen these before, but I happened across. This is kind of weird. But I happened across some of the special edition Barbie dolls. Have you ever seen these?
I have not. I mean, sometimes it's fun to just browse around Barnes and Noble, but I never came across those.
Yeah, I took pictures of them. I'll have to send them over. But these are special edition Barbie dolls, and they're expensive. They're like $100 each. But there's a Leia one and a Vader one. Vader's kind of like this punk rock Barbie almost that has these dark sunglasses, and like the purse is kind of like stylized after Vader's chest plate.
Nice.
And very cool looking. Like I wouldn't even mind having them on my shelf, but I thought about getting one for my daughter, but $100.
Well, yeah, we are currently in the process of collecting Barbie dolls at my house with my 3-year-old daughter. So, we might have to take a trip
tell me
there.
about it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that'd be just a great way to introduce Sydney to Star Wars in yet another way on top of the many ways I'm already doing that. So.
Yeah. And then there's a couple board games that I really, really wanted to buy. Have you seen any of the Fantasy Flight games?
No. I
okay.
haven't.
So one of them is the Imperial Assault that we brought over that one night to check out.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that, but it's not all. They're not all like that. Some of them are more board game-esque games, and there was an Outer Rim game that it looked really fun. So maybe one of these days I'll have to pick that up and check that out. So
yeah, well, speaking of board games, I'm normally not a Monopoly fan, but for Christmas, my wife Brittany got me the Star Wars Monopoly.
Okay.
That we played, and now at this point, that is the only Monopoly I will play. I think because it was a lot of fun. You got you had credits instead of money, and they even had like the new Episode 9 planets on the board and everything as well. So
nice. Okay.
Yeah. I enjoyed that.
Nice. So, were you playing that this week then?
No, we played that a few weeks back, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. So, what have you been up to this week?
This week I've been checking out some
Star
Wars animation. Resistance is now on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
and
the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and I never finished season 2, so I watched episodes 15 and 16. It was The New World and No Place Safe, and the show has a lot of positives, a lot of good things about it. I think the animation style is just gorgeous, and
yeah, I do really like that cell shading style.
Right, and it's interesting to think about like cinematography in an animated show, because normally you think of like live action, but it has beautiful cinematography, and I think it looks especially good on Disney Plus, because I had been watching it on the Disney Now app, which, by the way, is one of the most annoying apps I've ever experienced in my life. It just always would fail for me. But on Disney Plus,
it tends to log me out a lot, and that bugs me about Disney now. But
right.
Which is a pain because it's a TV provider connected thing. Then you have to go back through and connect to your TV provider all over again, and it's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good things about Resistance, and there's a lot of great moments. I think sometimes, it's definitely a show for younger audience, and so sometimes like the slapstick, silly comedy, and the constant cat and mouse game between like the First Order and the Resistance kind of feels like the story doesn't get kind of where you want it to go. But so there's some drawbacks, but a lot of positives too if you get the chance to check it out.
I do have a little Resistance story I can tell you though.
All right.
A couple of weeks ago, I was watching my nephew. My nephew was over here while his mother, my sister, was working, and my wife was mostly watching him. But at one point, my wife had to leave to pick up my daughter from school, and so he came downstairs and hung out with me for a while she was gone. And I was working, and he was sitting over on the other side of the room playing, and I think I was listening to a Star Wars podcast or music or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but somehow he asked me what it was, and I said it was Star Wars. And he said, and he's like 4, so this is like a 4-year-old conversation, But he said, "Yeah, I don't watch Star Wars." I was like, "Well, why not?" He goes, "I haven't watched it since I was a baby." Okay. I mean, you're 4, but okay.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? We're going to watch Star Wars. And I put on Resistance for him because I knew what style of show it was. And he's very much into things like Power Rangers right now. And so I put Resistance on the first episode, and he sat there and just quiet and just watched the whole thing for like a half an hour, like one episode and then a little bit of another one. And then it was time to go back upstairs. And then we had him the next day also. So he comes back down and he says, "Uncle Adam, can I watch Star Wars, please?"
Now he's asking for it.
You can. And then a week later, he comes back and he remembers and he comes back down and he says, "I want to watch Star Wars again." So
he's hooked now.
So I've got him hooked, and it was Resistance that did it. So
yeah, I mean, you never know what in Star Wars is going to hook somebody in. It can be so many different things. And, for my daughter, most of the time it's been Resistance as well. Like she'll ask to watch it when the characters are on screen. She'll go, "Oh, that's Kaz," or,
right.
That's BB-8, and she's definitely into it.
So just remember when you're watching or reading something and it doesn't ring true for you. Maybe it's just not for you right now, and maybe someday you'll come back to it and it might be for you, but it might right now it just might be Star Wars for someone else, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it could be building a new generation of Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Aside from Resistance, I watched the Clone Wars obviously, and finished Force Collector last night, which I'll be doing a review on later in the show. So
sweet. So we have some poll results, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to next, actually. Our poll result. Yeah. So the question was, which High Republic publication are you most looking forward to? And we had 23 votes, and Light of the Jedi won the vote with 78%, actually.
Yeah.
Which I kind of anticipated, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I went with Into the Dark just because I knew that Light of the Jedi was going to run away with it. So I wanted to give Claudia Gray some love.
You can't go wrong with Claudia Gray. Again, she's my favorite Star Wars author, which is, I love her stuff.
Yeah.
So I think,
like I said, not very surprising that Light of the Jedi was.
No, I mean, I think it's like the flagship.
For
novel,
sure.
Basically, it's front and center in the marketing so far, and I think it's where the great disaster event happens that kind of is the catalyst for everything else. So, that's our poll. What's coming up on this week's show, Adam?
So we got some, like you mentioned, you got your Force Collector review. We're going to jump into that, but before we get into that stuff, we have some news. We have some spoilers news about the novelization. We have some video game news, And we have some behind-the-scenes Disney news that we can talk about. Bob Iger and Bob Chapek. We're going to cover that a little bit. We have Clone Wars. Since we didn't talk about Clone Wars last week, that means we have 2 episodes this week to talk about. So we're going to talk about episodes 2 and 3. And then we have a Discord question we're going to answer. But that's episode 19 in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
As you mentioned, that first bit of news is, and this is going to tell you, Adam, how light the news in Star Wars was this week.
Yeah.
That on the Star Wars weekly news show that they have on the YouTube channel, one news story was that the novelization will be coming out in like 2 weeks. So that was their one news bit. And so let's throw up a spoiler warning right now for anybody who doesn't want anything from the novelization to be spoiled, because unfortunately for us, or anybody who's on Twitter following Star Wars stuff, even sites like IGN, they just blatantly threw out spoilers without warning anybody about them.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen these, but you want to read the book and you want some surprises, skip ahead a few minutes here.
Yeah. So it's kind of frustrating.
Very frustrating. That's what I want to talk about. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically what somebody kind of revealed through an excerpt from the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker was that basically Palpatine was in a clone body in The Rise of Skywalker, and that body couldn't really sustain maybe his Force abilities, and that's why he had the appearance that he did, possibly. That's kind of the way I took it, but I don't. What are your thoughts on this, Adam?
So my thoughts about the clone body itself is I get it, and I was maybe partially expecting that, and it was kind of cool to see that confirmed.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm definitely on board with it, and I think it makes sense, and I think that's kind of what I had expected, because he did, and it kind of ties into what he says in the movie, that he's died before. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. So he didn't survive the Death Star 2, and that makes the most sense for me, just seeing how that whole thing went down. But what my main thoughts on this are is I'm just really ticked off. Like, so the novel actually dropped early at a convention in Chicago, and is that C2E2, I think, something like that. Sounds familiar. Yeah.
So Del Rey was there, and they, as a little treat for convention goers, dropped a novel early. You could get it at the convention, which is cool. I don't have any problem with that. And they caught a little flack this week, which I think is very unfair. Right. Because when you're marketing these things, and when you're going to special events, it makes total sense that you might want to have a surprise there for people. And dropping a book a couple weeks early, that's a surprise. That's a cool surprise. I have zero problem with that.
No, I agree. And the problem is kind of with the people that chose to share it the way that they did. What
I have a problem with is you getting a copy of a book and then going and posting full pages pictures of it on Twitter, or if you're a news outlet, you just run a story with the headline, with a spoiler right up front in the headline, and don't even give warnings about it. That's what really upsets me about this. There's people that are really
very irresponsible.
Yeah, not 99% of the world can't even buy this book right now. They couldn't read it if they wanted to. So be mindful of that when you're putting out stuff on your website or putting out stuff on Twitter, that you're posting things that people might want to save for later. So people might want to be surprised by this stuff when they read it. So just be mindful of that. I understand. I understand that books aren't the main part of the mainstream's consumption of Star Wars, but there's people that really look forward to it. So maybe keep them in mind when you're doing this stuff. So
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually, Adam. I know it's just a novelization of a movie that's already been out for a few months, but there are new and expanded details that a lot of us aren't aware of yet that we want to kind of read for the first time. So,
right.
Yeah. And ready for our next piece of news here?
Yeah.
So we have a rumored game coming from EA, possibly called Project Maverick. Adam, are you okay with telling us about this one?
This, as far as I know, this is like a data mining thing through the PlayStation Store. Which, if you're not totally familiar with that term out there, data mining is mainly when either individuals, or actually it could be bots or like automated accounts, things like that, that will basically just dive through data on different services. So when you see a lot of really early news like this, sometimes it's through data mining, and it seems like someone, according to the article that we have here from Star Wars Newsnet, there has been a finding on the PlayStation Store for Project Maverick. Since then, is it Jason Schreier, I believe is his name? Yeah, Jason Schreier from Kotaku has commented on this, and he's kind of confirming it. So it seems like, while it's not officially confirmed, it seems like this might be a pretty legit leak, more or less.
Yeah, it definitely seems legit.
Yeah, he's saying that this is the game from EA Motive. Motive is a division of EA, and they actually worked on Battlefront 2 in association with DICE.
Okay.
So
could be multiplayer type stuff.
It seems like that is what it's going to be, because the entry on the PlayStation Store did mention a beta. Most of the time for betas, when you get that type of thing, it's going to be for a multiplayer game. So it's a very safe bet that there's some type of multiplayer aspect to this. So we don't have any other details. That's what we have right now. I don't think that this is Battlefront 3. If anyone's out there thinking of that. I
don't think so either.
Yeah, Schreier had mainly said that this is kind of a smaller, unique project, I think was the word he used. So
yeah, and if you don't mind, I might speculate just a little bit on what this might be.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I think of Maverick, of course I think of Top Gun, and I think of kind of fighter jets. So I'm and I'm wondering if this is, I think, of course we do have some starfighter modes on Battlefront and everything, but I think one thing we're kind of lacking so far is like a Rogue Squadron type game. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if this could be solely focused on being a fighter pilot, but you can also do multiplayer and stuff like that. I don't know, just a thought of speculation of what it could be.
If it ended up being Rogue Squadron, I would I might hyperventilate a little bit. I might need a paper bag.
Me too. Me too.
It's been so long since I played a Rogue Squadron game.
Yeah.
And I remember Rogue Squadron 3 on GameCube, and I don't have it anymore, and I want to try to find it used somewhere. But if it was a Rogue Squadron game, I would be all over that.
Yeah, I'd be all in. So that's what I'm hoping for.
I don't know if you remember a few shows ago, I don't even remember what number it was, but we did that Discord question, one of the about what game we would greenlight if we could.
Yeah.
And mine was Rogue Squadron, so.
I'm with you. I loved Rogue Squadron, so
yeah,
I'd be down.
Yeah.
Next up, we have some big news, not only for Star Wars, but just in the world of Disney in general. As we didn't cover this last week, but
no, we didn't. But this is a good week to cover it since there's not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, the news is pretty light. So
yeah, right.
Bob Iger officially stepped down as the CEO of Disney, and and Bob Chapek, is that how you say it, Adam?
Chapek, I believe.
Chapek steps in. Now, Bob Chapek was the Was he the chairman of Disney Parks?
Disney
Is that
Parks.
or CEO
it's
or
a
chairman?
it's a long title, but it was Parks, Resorts, and Experiences or something like that.
Right, and he was heavily involved in Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah,
And
very much so.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it seems to me, I don't know a whole lot about the second Bob here, Chapek, but it's at least it's a seamless transition with the first name, so you just go from Bob to Bob.
Right.
I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm sure I'm pretty confident in Bob Iger making the decision of his successor. And I think this is something, although to me it was a surprise when it was announced, as I dug deeper into it, this has kind of been a long time coming.
Yeah,
and
very much so. Very much so.
And I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit on just some reflections on Bob Iger and his involvement in Star Wars. And
sure.
And I dug in, Adam, to an older article from the Hollywood Reporter about Bob Iger kind of releasing his memoir book that he released.
Yes.
And so if we look back at kind of Bob's involvement with Lucasfilm and Star Wars, he purchased Lucasfilm in 2012. And one thing he kind of documents in this memoir is that, and I respect how transparent he is about this, that they had a rocky start with George Lucas, because George believed that they would be using his story treatments for the sequel trilogy, but they really didn't end up doing that. And of course, opinions differ on whether that was the right move or not. Like we talked about before, Adam, it would have gotten deep into the midichlorian stuff, which maybe if I'm back in 2012 and I'm purchasing Star Wars or Lucasfilm and I'm going to make new movies, and I know fans had an issue with midichlorians in the prequels, I'm probably going to try to separate myself from that a little bit and make it feel like the original trilogy. So I think they probably made the right move, but that's debatable.
Yeah, sure. I'd probably fall into that camp as well, but yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the main thing was George Lucas felt like the sequel trilogy didn't add anything new or not many like new kind of planets or environments or technical leaps forward when it comes to technology and film. Before I move on to the other details, what are your thoughts on that, Adam? Would you agree or disagree with that?
That the sequels didn't advance the technology at all?
Yeah, or introduce like new types of planets.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, for sure. I'm there on that.
Yeah,
I got a little burned out on jungles, deserts, and snow.
Yeah. You do have to love George Lucas's creativity and what he kind of the world building and everything. It's one of his strengths.
But I will say, in the Disney era, that I've had Rebels and now Clone Wars again to kind of give me that diversity in planets, so it's still there
for sure.
I would have liked to see it on screen, and I understand that makes it impossible to do practical effects of that stuff. I get that.
Yeah,
but I would have liked to have seen it on screen.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. When you're trying to use practical effects and shoot on location and stuff, it's going to be difficult to kind of use some of those types of planets that George did in the prequels.
However, I will say that going forward, I want to see that more, because we have things like the Mandalorian, like stagecraft.
Yeah, they were calling it the volume as well, I think, or stagecraft. Two different names for that, and I think I'm with you. They have the technology now to be able to make it look real.
So now that they've played with that a little bit, and I think they can maybe experiment with that more, I want to see that more. So
definitely. Now, moving on to kind of the second part of what I looked into here, Iger kind of admits that he maybe tried to push out too much too fast when it came to Star Wars, and so now we kind of have this slowdown in movie production, at least as the focus kind of moves to Disney Plus and TV shows and everything. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what does this mean going forward for Star Wars? And as of course, Bob Iger is still there and is still probably the most important and powerful person at Disney until he actually retires in 2021. which also, by the way, Kathleen Kennedy's contract is also up in 2021. But at that point, Adam, do you think we're going to see a transition into a, kind of a new era, a new Lucasfilm president, possibly when all this stuff kind of goes down in 2021?
Oh, that's so hard to predict. I think it really depends on what Kathleen Kennedy wants to do. If she's kind of tired of this whole thing, then I think it makes sense for new CEO to step in with a new president of Lucasfilm. He's already getting kind of a new president in Marvel, with Kevin Feige overseeing everything now. It would make sense, but I really think it's going to be up to Kathleen Kennedy. If she wants to stay on, I think she'll be on, and I don't really have a problem with that. So, I complain about some of the stuff that's happened, but she's also given us things like Mandalorian and Rebels and a lot of movies that I actually really love. I love Force Awakens, and she's given us Rogue One, and some excellent movies. And regardless of what is said on Twitter, she's been a pretty successful leader at Lucasfilm, and it's hard to dispute that. I mean,
when you look at the
multiple
numbers,
billion-dollar movies, and you don't just do that without without the skill set to make that happen. So,
right, and I agree, and that's absolutely what I wanted to do with this. Just kind of talking about Bob Iger and looking back at he's very much part of the reason why we have the Star Wars that we have today, and there's so much content out there from this era since the purchase in 2012 that I absolutely love. And and they have kind of admitted to some of their errors and mistakes and things they did and are learning from them, and I think they're going to iron some things out, and Star Wars is going to keep going forward. So I just wanted to kind of look back on Bob Iger's legacy and how he has affected Star Wars, and what it might look like in the future. So yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say about that, unless you had anything else.
Bob Iger, I guess I've been expecting this for a while, and when the news broke, it was a little bit of a surprise, but it totally makes sense that it happened when it did. And he's been talking about this for years. So him stepping down as CEO has been on the table for a long time, and it was really just a matter of when this was going to happen. And we've rolled out some of the major parks things. We've rolled out Disney Plus. We're in a little bit of a lull right now because we do have Marvel this year as far as movies go.
Yeah.
But that's also right, like in between phases for that. So it totally makes sense that this would be the time to transition. And like you said, he's still staying on. He's still there. He was actually overseeing creative at the company, which for a creative-minded company, yeah. I mean, for a creative-minded company, that's a big part of what's going to be happening is still going to be underneath Bob Iger. So,
for sure.
So yeah, for me, it's not so much that I'm reflective on him leaving. It's just a transition period that I was mostly expecting, and a little bit of a surprise that it came when it did. But totally makes sense. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, are you ready to dive into some Clone Wars?
I am always ready to dive into Clone Wars.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
All right. Do you want to lead us through a couple episodes here, Adam?
Yeah. So, like we said off the top of the show, we didn't cover Clone Wars last week, so that means we've got more Clone Wars to cover this week. So we have 2 episodes. We have episode 2, and that's what we're going to leave off with here. Episode 2 was called
A Distant Echo.
Yep. A distant echo. So if we remember at the end of episode 1, we leave off with the clones, the Bad Batch with Anakin. I'm sorry, the Bad Batch, not with Anakin at that point.
Right, not yet.
Anakin and is still back at the base, but the Bad Batch with Rex and Cody infiltrate this base on Anaxis, and find out that their old friend Echo is still alive. Echo had died in season 3, I want to say. It was really a turning point, I guess, for Rex, because that was one of the things he had to make a tough decision there to leave Echo behind, and Echo seemingly paid with his life, but they receive a live transmission with Echo's clone number, and we find out that Echo may be alive. So episode 2, we start with that, and this is Rex is wanting to lead a rescue mission for Echo, more or less. We really start with this Anakin and Padme moment, which I think is a beautiful moment. But Anakin goes inside Rex's bunker, I guess, or I don't want to say bunker. What do I want to say?
Maybe it was like their living quarters.
Living quarters, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
A great thing between Anakin and Rex here, because Rex is kind of guarding his quarters so that Anakin can have a moment with Padme through a hologram call. The one thing that I want to talk about here with the Anakin and Padme call is I love the very beginning of it, where Anakin closes his eyes and starts the call, and then you can just see how Padme's voice, just her voice, affects him. He just kind of lets that wash over him, and it's almost like a breath of fresh air for him,
Yeah, I also loved this moment. I even kind of caught, I was, the first time I watched it, I was just using my surround sound and everything, but I watched it again last night, and I kind of had my headphones on, and I could hear musical hints of Across the Stars
nice.
in there a little bit as I listened really closely, and I loved that and what it excuse me, added to the scene. And this was actually a scene that originally wasn't supposed to be in the episode, because I was watching a Dave Filoni interview, and he was saying that originally they were supposed to have just this kind of humorous bit about Padme being like painted on the ship of the Bad Batch, and not have her actually, be, because she wasn't going to appear in season 7 at all, actually, but Dave Filoni created this scene, because he thought it was important to have her in this. So I really liked that.
Yeah, definitely. But then Obi-Wan kind of comes up and creates this nice little tension moment with Rex, where he has to hide that Anakin's in there, but Anakin comes out and plays off like nothing's wrong. But as Anakin and Rex are walking away, Obi-Wan kind of has the last say, and he says that he hopes that Anakin at least said hi to Padme for him.
So he knows what's going on here. A little bit at least. Yeah.
And I gotta say, Rex's reaction to that was just hilarious, because he looks so surprised, like he's so caught off guard, and it's a hilarious reaction from Rex on that whole thing. I mean, his eyes jump out of his head, and
right. This whole sequence was one of my favorite things about this episode, for sure.
Yeah. And it gives me like Obi-Wan's just kind of like you said, he knows this is going on, but he just kind of picks his battles with Anakin, I guess.
Yeah, and I think because he realizes that his feelings for Satine, yeah. So I think he can relate in that way, and it's a complicated thing being a Jedi, I'm sure, with, attachment is forbidden and everything we learn in episode 2, Attack of the Clones. But love is kind of encouraged.
Right.
It's just, it's a complicated thing,
Yeah. So Anakin and Rex, with the Bad Batch, go out maybe at the displeasure of the council, I guess. Go out on a rescue mission to find Echo, and it's a little rough getting there. They have some problems with Tech is tracking this signal, but it kind of comes in and out. And we find out there's maybe a little bit of bad blood with the Bad Batch, which was maybe a little bit hinted in episode 1, but it felt almost a little bit more lighthearted ribbing. But then there's a couple real standoff moments with Rex and the Bad Batch, and some name calling that's a little bit more not lighthearted, with the whole reg thing. And
it got a little dicey there for a little bit.
Yeah, I can't say that I really loved this part of the episode.
Right.
To be honest, like if there's a low point in the episode for me, it would probably be this little spat that they had here, and then also that hallway scene, the whole signal dropping in and out was a little bit cheesy for me.
Yeah.
But I will say, when they do get to this facility where they believe that Echo is, there's this really cool action scene at the beginning where they first get into that big room.
Yeah, definitely.
As a gamer that enjoys games where stealth is optional, that whole thing about stealth kind of going out the window when the Bad Batch just goes in and wrecks the whole place. It was a good moment. Funny. It was a good moment.
Yeah, because Anakin's like, nobody sees us or whatever. The door opens, they're all there. They see him right away. They do eventually get to this big ominous looking door where, of course, that would have to be where Echo is. And they do find Echo, but Echo is really kind of hooked into a computer, more or less, and he's looking he's in bad shape.
Yeah, he's pale, he is emaciated, he is obviously been tortured. He thinks he's still back at the Citadel. He's kind of reliving that moment in his head. It's kind of his own like nightmare on repeat type thing. When I saw this, my immediate reaction was, if you think that these shows are for kids, this is one of those scenes that I can show you that might change your mind, because certainly. This is some pretty heavy stuff that you see with Echo. He's like I said before, he's obviously been tortured. It's rough to see on some levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some heavy and dark stuff throughout the Clone Wars, for sure. So I agree.
So they do actually rescue Echo, and overall for this episode, I was a little bit surprised that Echo was so easy to find, for lack of a better phrase, because I mean, while getting to him, I don't think was necessarily easy for these characters. It resolved itself in like a half of an episode, more or less, so,
right.
I was maybe thinking that it might be a little bit more difficult to find Echo, but it wasn't. They recover Echo, and that's where we leave off for episode 2. So episode 3 then, which debuted yesterday, and this episode is called On the Wings of, can you pronounce that?
Would be Kiradax? Maybe
looks
Kiradax.
Looks like Kiradax. Yeah. So, after escaping the facility, again, some pretty good action scenes in this whole episode, I think, overall.
Yeah, I was going to say that the first 3 episodes of this season are packed with a lot of pretty good action,
right,
for sure.
Yeah. So, I particularly enjoyed is escaping that room where they find Echo.
Yeah, can I just say that I love Wrecker, by the way?
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Before you move on, did you notice in episode 2 that Wrecker, when they were on the ship, he was like shoulder pressing a gonk droid with like one hand in the background?
No,
did you notice? Oh my god. I only noticed it the second time I watched it, and it's just hilarious. You have to check it out. And then he just simply is just tossing his friends
that's how they get out.
There's into that ventilation shaft.
There's this ventilation shaft is like, I don't know, like 20 feet above them, and that's their way out. And I think at this point I can mention, Echo has, while they've been using, the Techno Union, who seems to be behind this with Wat Tambor, have been using Echo, like his knowledge, to create their algorithm to fight back against the Republic. He's able to kind of do the same to them, and he knows all, like, everything about this base. So he has the schematics, he has all that stuff he knows what they're up to here.
Mm-hmm.
So with that knowledge, he knows that going up through this vent above them will get them out of the facility. But in order to do that, Anakin can jump easily, but none of the other ones can. So Wrecker, though, right. Wrecker can just throw them up.
He's just a beast.
He just grabs. Was it Hunter he grabbed?
I think
it was Hunter he grabbed. So he just grabs Hunter and just drags him over, and Hunter's kind of like kicking and screaming, but he just throws him up into the vent.
Throws him up there. Yeah.
And so
awesome.
So their escape is just Wrecker just tossing everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then Anakin floats Wrecker up, which he doesn't like too much.
Right.
So yeah, they get out through the ventilation shaft, and they get to a point where they have to cross this bridge. It's not really a bridge. It's kind of like
kind of like this big pipe. I think.
Yeah, it's like a pipe that's connecting these two sections of the base together, and that's how they can get out. But
by the way, I had a moment of terror whenever I saw them doing this, because for a split second, like, I pictured myself having to like walk across this pipe that's suspended, like high in the air, and I'm like afraid of heights, and I was like, for a brief second, I was like, oh man, if I was in that situation, there's no way I'd be able to walk across that thing.
Yeah. I have a natural fear of heights, so
yeah.
I really try not to think about that, but yeah. Wrecker is again kind of the comic relief here, because he's freaking out and he can't look down and all this other stuff.
Right.
So they end up getting caught on this pipe or whatever this thing is, on both sides by these droids. It's very different looking droids, which we find out this week that they can fly. Because they look like B-1 droids, but they have these things coming out that looked kind of cumbersome in the second episode, but this episode we find out that they can actually use those to fly.
Yep. There's some utility there.
Yeah. So they get caught on this bridge on both sides. What do you think about that whole scene? Because that one shot of them, it was like a wide shot with them in the middle of this pipe, and then the droids on both sides. I thought that was an amazing looking shot.
Yeah, it was a very cool shot. And speaking of awesome shots, I didn't mention this, that even in episode 2, the first shot of episode 2, we almost see this first person perspective of the ship kind of flying in and landing in the hangar. And I just love the shots that I've been seeing in this season so far. There's just been some beautiful shots.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, which I forget what we were talking about, but with cinematography in this.
Yeah, with Resistance, cinematography and animation, and it's a thing, and
it's very much a thing. Yeah, it's very much a thing. So yeah, they are able to escape, and they make it back to the I forget what these aliens are called, to be honest with you. But
yeah, I forget too.
Yeah, they make it back there, and they do actually convince them to assist in this fight, because they know that the Techno Union will be coming after them to try to recover Echo. We've seen this a little bit before. This same type of argument with a group of native people to a planet that don't want to get involved in this war, but they get drug into it anyway.
Right. I think that's an interesting theme, Adam. And, I definitely made a note of that, too, that basically the agreement they had in the beginning was they didn't want the war to be brought to them.
Right.
And that is the very thing that happens. But then they realized that basically they have to be involved at this point. So I really think that's an interesting theme.
Yeah, for sure. So they do get involved, and the war does come to them, and there's a pretty good action sequence here.
That was a very cool battle.
Yeah, very cool battle. Anakin's doing some Jedi stuff with those 3-legged walkers that the Techno Union brings in. There's very tall walkers with almost like spider type legs, but only 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Wrecker gets to throw some people again. He throws Rex up onto one of these. Wrecker has a pretty cool superhero scene where he stops at one of these legs, walker legs, from crushing the aliens that they're fighting with. Anakin, like I said, gets to do some Jedi things. He's jumping around with his lightsaber and chopping off legs and doing all this other stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty cool to see, like, kind of almost how easily Anakin, using the Force, was able to take out one of them, and then kind of it was a little bit more of a struggle for the Bad Batch and the other guys to take the other one out.
Right.
Yeah.
So they do repel those forces. They for the most part protect this village for as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point they leave this village, and we see a nice little ending moment with Rex and Echo. Rex says, maybe this can be the start of old times all over again, and Echo doesn't seem to be so sure about that.
Yeah, kind of left it in kind of a place of uncertainty. Was can things really go back to normal with and everything?
Yeah, for sure. So that is episode 3.
Yeah, I'd say I enjoyed both episodes. I think there were some small quiet moments that were nice, like between Anakin and Padme, and then you had like some good comedic moments with Wrecker. You had some good action stuff. What were your feelings overall? Yeah,
probably about the same. Yeah, I enjoyed both episodes. There's a little bit of kind of mad moment for me in episode 2. I can't really say that was there that much in episode 3. I do find myself during big battle scenes maybe kind of like I enjoy seeing some of the aspects, but I do maybe kind of tune out a little bit.
I'm with you. Yeah,
but yeah, overall, two episodes that I did very much enjoy.
Yeah, I'm with you because I guess for me, I love action and everything, but I'm even bigger fan of small moments and character moments and character development. And I'm wondering, if this arc here with the Bad Batch has kind of reached its conclusion, and where it's going to go next. If we kind of are getting closer to the end of the war and closer to Revenge of the Sith, and where the story might go from here. So I'm excited to see it.
I think we have one more episode. If I've been hearing this right, I think we have one more episode of this Echo arc.
Okay.
Before we move into something else. So.
Right.
So yeah, I hear that episode 4. I think we'll wrap that up.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And any other thoughts on the Clone Wars, Adam?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so as we were talking about the Clone Wars and thinking about the prequel era, I'm going to review a novel that actually touches a little bit on the prequel era, even though it's kind of set in the sequel era, but has some connections to the prequels, and that is Force Collector. I have to say overall before I get into any, and I don't, there's only minor spoilers that I'm gonna cover here, but
Okay.
before I get into any of those, I just want to say overall that I really, really enjoyed Force Collector a lot more than I thought I would. My wife had kind of said, here, this was on sale for $1. I got it for you if you want to read it. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. I wasn't sure about it. It wasn't on my list or anything of books to read. But then as soon as I read the first couple chapters, it hooked me. I was in.
Nice.
It's really, yeah.
This is one of my library avalanche books that I have to get to in the next 2 weeks.
And it's a quick read. I mean, even though it took me a long time by normal standards, I'm a slow reader, but even for me, it was a quicker read than normal. And it's probably my favorite Star Wars novel since Lost Stars, actually, if I'm being honest. And just because, it has that young adult element, and maybe I'm just a sucker for young adult now, as I've said before, and I still feel like a young adult. So I love like the coming of age stories in Star Wars, and the kind of regular ordinary person that finds himself in this extraordinary circumstance, and
there's a couple of those stories.
Yeah,
there's one or two.
It's just kind of familiar in Star Wars, there's a couple of those. And I love that, and that's why I loved it so much, because it is a coming of age story. There's a little bit of romance in there that I enjoy, but basically we have a story about a boy named Carr and a girl named Maze.
This is a story about a boy.
It's a story about a boy. Yeah. And then Carr has a repurposed medical droid named RZ7, I believe it is. And he kind of has some K2SO vibes to him, but he's different from K2, but he kind of provides some comedy and some dry humor and stuff like that. Now, when Carr touches certain objects, he has discovered that he can see their past, especially when they're important objects, so to speak. And it causes him to kind of pass out.
Oh, okay. So he has that kind of Cal Kestis vibe to him.
Yeah, sort of in a way. I would agree. Yeah. Or even like what I thought of when Rey touches
Rey with the lightsaber,
the Skywalker lightsaber, and kind of has that vision. So it's kind of like that.
Okay.
And so he wears gloves at first to protect himself because of what it does to his body. But he eventually kind of learns to harness his ability
kind of like
by the end a little bit more.
Kind of has a rogue vibe to him then from X-Men.
Yeah.
And cool.
This is definitely a feel good Star Wars story that feels like Star Wars, if I were to describe it. And basically this adventure takes them across the galaxy, and it connects many different locations and characters from the canon that we know. So we get to visit planets like Utapau, which is the prequel connection that I mentioned.
Okay.
We go to Jakku, we go to Batu, and we run into characters like Doc Undar, who we could see at Galaxy's Edge on Batu, and even Unkar Plutt as well.
Nice. Okay.
And so it really connects to some of the planets and characters.
So it does have that kind of Lost Stars vibe. Then it's kind of like a replay of.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly why I loved it so much, Adam. Was because to me it reminded me of Lost Stars in the best ways possible. Because like the characters in Lost Stars kind of reliving the events of the original trilogy from a different point of view. Carr, through his ability, learns the story of the Skywalkers, but I think, but even more importantly than learning that story, in those connections, is that he kind of figures out his own story and how he's connected to the Force, and where that connection comes from. And that's kind of where it leads into at the end of the novel. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say at this point, because I don't want to spoil anything, but it was
cool.
I really enjoyed Force Collector, and I would highly recommend it for a very quick, fun, feel good read that really feels like Star Wars and connects to things from canon. So
all right, I might do that one next then, actually.
So and Adam also, I'd very much be willing to do a kind of a canon catch up on Force Collector. So,
oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll have that out for
sure.
next
Do
week.
that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're about ready to wrap up the show for this week. I think, aren't we? Or no, we have. I'm sorry. We actually had a Discord question that I almost skipped over. My bad.
I never asked that question until after I've done it.
This question comes to us from Mena, one of our Discord friends, and he asks. He says, maybe we've mentioned this before, but what's up with Stormtrooper armor? He says, really just one shot will kill a Stormtrooper with full body armor. And also, why do ships go down in space? And I think what he's meaning there is, like during dogfights, when they get shot down, they'll kind of go downwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's our question, kind of some in-universe things like Stormtrooper body armor and maybe being a little bit flimsy and, some of the gravity effects in space. My answer to this, and I talked about it a bit in Discord, but I wanted to talk about it here too. My answer to this is it's basically just a suspension of disbelief for me. And there's not just with these, but there's other details in Star Wars where if you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, it doesn't line up because this is a fictional story, as much as some of us might want it to be real and how seriously some of us take it. It's not real. This isn't a documentary,
Speaking of that, I think somebody was interviewing J.J. Abrams about something, and they asked him, so are you using like real science when it comes to Star Wars, and do you think about like this and this theory? And he simply said no.
No, right.
No. So it was, it's but I think they even have like a science in Star Wars type of special somewhere, or maybe it was something like the History Channel or something.
Yeah, they
something
do something like that. I remember Mythbusters did an episode on Star Wars, and like, I just don't pay attention. Like, I remember when Force Awakens came out, and everyone was hyped beyond belief for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Really fun time Star Wars because everyone was just on board with Star Wars at that point. And I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson took to Twitter and said, BB-8 can't roll on sand because he's a ball. Like, I don't care. Like,
yeah.
I don't know why that has to be the take that we come away with from Force Awakens. Is it because BB-8's a ball, he's going to not be able to roll on sand? Some of the stuff is it's just supposed to be fun, and I think Stormtroopers die with one shot because that's just what they have to do in that scene. Our heroes have to win, so they kind of have to push through these Stormtroopers. And for me, I don't think that when these stories were being made that there was any deeper thought than that, honestly.
Probably not. I think it is. I think it's a fun thing to think about, though. And fun question. I do have some thoughts about this.
Go for it.
And when it comes to the Stormtrooper armor, I think it's less about protecting them and more about them all looking uniform. And because they're the Empire, and they don't. Let's face it, the Emperor, Darth Vader, they don't care about these guys. I mean, sure they want them to put up a good fight and and everything, but
it's
they're
more
basically
about force
expendable.
And it's more about force and numbers with them.
It's that, and I think it's about the imagery.
Yeah, sure.
So for me, that kind of explains it enough to me. But then as far as the ships going down in space, one thing I did consider just from a scientific standpoint, and I don't really know enough about this topic to give an educated opinion on it, but I'm wondering if like a lot of times when these battles take place, if they're kind of in orbit or near a planet, if they get shot down,
So
does
still
the
within
gravity from the
atmosphere.
planet does it pull them? Does the gravity from the planet pull them down?
Could be.
I don't know,
Could be,
but
sure. Could be
but
also
I think,
an inertia from like an explosion or something could push them
right,
in
right.
a certain way. And like I said, neither of us are scientists, so
No. So I don't really know, but like from a visual standpoint, just thinking
Right.
about like what the viewer wants to see, like when you see a battle, when something is destroyed, you want to see it that it's definitively down. It's going down. It's destroyed.
Right.
I don't think it would be as satisfying to like destroy a ship or something, or break off a piece of a ship and it just floats. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be as visually satisfying as kind of seeing it actually go down. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. No, it does.
Yeah, so that was kind of fun to think about. So.
Yeah, it was. And when we talk about science in Star Wars, I always go back to Episode 2 with the slave one and those sonic I forget what they're called, sonic bombs or sonic things.
Seismic charges.
There you go.
I love that part. I love that scene.
Yeah.
Like the sound of it. There's like a pause before the sound
where everything
erupts.
goes quiet and then and
yeah.
But scientifically, I don't think that could happen in space.
But probably not. Yeah.
but it's cool.
It's cool. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think it comes down to. But Foxman 150 Nathan is also in our server, and he put a when we're talking about possible scientific explanations for this stuff, he dropped a YouTube video from Nerdist, and this is a video with let me get his name, is Because Science with Kyle Hill, and he goes kind of deep into some of the science behind some of the possible science behind Stormtrooper armor and why that might happen the way it does.
Nice.
He even goes into some of like the body suit stuff, the black body suit, like why it might be there, because the laser would generate so much heat that you would want to have something to protect the skin from the explosion that would ensue.
Right.
So, some interesting stuff there.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I classify this, and I don't mean this in any disparaging way, as like a headcanon type thing. Where if you want to watch this and you think that explains a lot of the science and that helps you appreciate the story for that, that much more, then go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, check out that video, and I'm going to link that video in the show notes as well, for anyone listening out there that is not in the Discord server, but you should join the Discord server also, so you can check out the video too. So.
Yeah, and thanks for that question.
Yeah,
and,
thanks, man, for the question.
We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love more questions, each week, and we enjoy answering them. So
yeah, definitely. I think that brings us to a point where we can wrap up episode 19. What do you think?
All right, yeah, let's wrap it up for this week.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
We do have some Trivial results.
Yeah, we have a Trivial answer and winner. And so the question was, what is the name of the Clone Wars character that is voiced by Jon Favreau? And that, of course, is Pre Vizsla. And Adam, can you tell us who our winner was?
Yeah, our winner this week is Terry Lester from our Facebook page. So, Terry, if you're listening to this, let us know where we can send you the... that was the second sister pin, right?
Second sister pin
from
Fallen Order, yeah.
Yeah, so make sure you message us on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you want to message us. But yeah, congratulations, Terry. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in for episode 19. It's been a lot of fun. We had a lot of cool stuff to talk about this week. If you're just listening and haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that. We're on a bunch of different podcast services. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, Castbox, all kinds of places. So make sure you're subscribing there and leave us a review if you can. If you're on iTunes, it really helps us get the show out to more people. If you don't listen on iTunes, but you have a PC or a Mac, you can go on iTunes and review us anyway. We would really appreciate it. Check out the website from a certain point of view.com. This past week, we've had a couple blog posts, one from me and one from Josh, both about our Guarding the Light series, where we're focusing on the positivity in Star Wars. So be sure to check those out.
I'm just loving that series so far, Adam, and thank you for initiating that. I think it's really important to focus on those positives in the fandom. So I've enjoyed that.
We're spreading some positivity here and from a certain point of view. So yeah, be sure to log on to the website and check that stuff out. As far as the other socials, you can follow us on Twitter at CertainPOVPod. You can follow us on Facebook. The page there is From a Certain Point of View. Discord server is the link for that will be in the show notes. It's also on the website as well. Email is certainpovpod@gmail.com. And you can also find us on anchor.fm, where you can follow the show there, and you can also send us voicemails that we can play on the show too. So,
well, Adam, thank you so much for taking us through all of that. And again, we would just love to hear from all of you and love to connect with you. And I know, speaking for myself, we have such a great time talking Star Wars, and I can't wait to talk Star Wars again next week with all of you. And until then, just remember that everything we told you today was true.
From a certain point of view.